Stop messing around, stop fooling around, stop delaying, stop procrastinating. Get up, get out, get it done. Everything is possible, nothing is a problem, and anything can be overcome. I just get my ass up out of bed, I get my shit together, and I get out and I start the fight. And that will transform you from a mere mortal into a superhuman being. I've never, ever, ever met anybody who told me that they got rich watching their IRA or their 401k. How are you, George?
I'm wonderful.
You're wearing a bright green shirt today, George.
I am. You know, we talk about standing out, and this is one way that I try and stand
That's
out.
fine.
My bright shirts,
You're
and
doing it.
Also this shirt was $2, and I expected to buy it just once for St. Patrick's Day, and I have another shirt that's $50, and I love that shirt. However, that shirt is starting to fray, and this shirt, in the same period of time, is still holding strong.
It's funny you should say that, because there's a trend that I'm noticing online, comes up in my feed. I see these videos of people comparing what they're wearing and how much it was to purchase the items that they're wearing. So guys will stick out their shoes and they'll be like, yeah, my shoes are $9 from Costco, and my jeans were $20, and my shirt was $4. And these are wealthy, successful guys, and they're like reverse bragging about how little they spend on the expensive look that they have. They're wearing all fake stuff and inexpensive stuff bought from Walmart and Costco. And their point is that you shouldn't go spend $800 on a Jimmy Choo whatever, and totally. A Prada whatever. And that stuff can come later. Spend your money on investing, and they compare, and it's a funny little thing. I don't know if you've seen it, but
I haven't seen
it reminds me that maybe you have seen that.
Yeah, no. But maybe I should start doing that with my own social accounts. I'll show my Esquire expertise.
Flex how little you spend on clothing. I think it's a good message and trend.
Yeah, that's like. Have you heard Mr. Money Mustache?
I have not.
Yeah, he's been pretty big for, I don't know, about 5-6 years now, and his whole thing has been to be very frugal. It's hyper frugality. But he started in the tech sector, and he was a programmer. And so he was making a good amount of money and then also cutting down his living expenses. And so as a result, he retired, I think, when he was like 32.
So he was frugal because he wanted money for retirement and for investing?
Correct.
Or because okay.
Yeah.
Well, that I support.
Cool. All right, well, to start off, I wanted to talk about house hacking.
Why?
Well, it's a phrase that I hear a lot on social media. It's thrown around a lot in the real estate game. And I was wondering, do you see that in house hacking, for those that don't know, is like renting out your primary residence? Do you find that to be a good way to kind of dip your toe into real estate investing, to building wealth? Like, how do you view that as someone who's been in the real estate game for a long time?
Necessity is the mother of invention. House hacking came about because people wanted to buy property and own property, but they needed to be able to carry it and pay the expenses on it and make mortgage payments. So is house hacking a good idea? If you're starting out and you need to stick your little toe in the water, like you just said, absolutely. Get a hold of some property where you can rent out rooms or rent out units, or legally, or if it's a multifamily situation or a duplex where you live in one and rent out the other, or whatever the case may be. Yeah, get started. It's a great way to go. If it's an owner-occupied house for you, you can get way better mortgage terms through an FHA loan program. So you can talk to your mortgage broker about that. You can get up to 96, 97% loan to value on the purchase of your home. So you have to come up with 3%.
Owner-occupied house as opposed to?
Investment property where you have a primary residence somewhere else and you don't live in the property that you're purchasing to rent out.
Got it.
But yeah, everyone's got to get started, and you need a place to live. So if you want to get into real estate, find something where you can get a 97% FHA loan, where you can live in one of the units or one of the rooms and rent out other rooms to friends, or if you're a student, or if you're just recently out of school and you're at a younger point in your life. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. That's how you get started.
Do you think does that allow for more cash flow, in your experience, does it allow for more cash flow as opposed to, say, taking a large sum of cash and investing it in
Well, you
assets?
have to compare investment alternatives, always be comparing your investment alternatives. So I don't know, George. It depends on what the alternative is for the large sum of cash that you were just hypothetically suggesting was available. But if you want to buy property and own property and you run your numbers and you say, well, I can live in one bedroom and I can rent out the other 3 bedrooms for $800 each, and we can share this house and split the utilities, and I can live rent free if I do that, a lot of people think that's an attractive way to get started.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
No, as opposed to house flipping and house hacking have a similar name, but they're different, right?
Well, what do you even mean? House flipping, look, when you flip houses, you're buying low and selling high. It's not unlike buying stocks or any other type of asset where you're buying low and your exit to make money is to sell high. And house flipping is really just that. Now, you try and increase your odds of having success of selling high by improving the house, renovating the house, maybe putting an addition on the house, repainting the outside, landscaping, all the things that we see on the popular house and garden TV shows that glamorize house flipping in all these different markets. If you do all those things, you maybe increase the likelihood of selling your house at a higher price than what you bought it for, taking also into account the amount that you have to put into it for the renovations. I never loved it for me. I never wanted to rely on the sale of an asset to occur at a certain point in time within certain economic conditions to yield a certain price in order for me to make money. It was too many things that I couldn't control. And if I was wrong, or if I was bad at it, or if I made a mistake, or if I didn't see a few costs creep up on me that I then had to spend money on and it ate away any profits, I didn't want to be wrong and I didn't want to have a failed investment. So I never did that. And buying low and selling high also means that when I sell, I'm paying taxes and I'm out of business. And as you know, George, I don't love selling, I don't love paying taxes, and I definitely don't like being out of business. So for me, selling has never really been a strategy that I pursued. So house flipping was never a strategy that I pursued. But I realize that there's a lot of people out there that do it. They find it attractive. I think the reason they find it attractive is because it's probably a little fun. They like to buy something that's a pig, put a little lipstick on it, charge a higher price for it. And when you sell and you close on the sale of that transaction, feels good. Feels good when you close. You got some money in the bank. But then what do you have the next day? When you wake up the next day, what happens? You got to figure out what you owe Uncle Sam. You got to go find the next deal because you're no longer in the real estate business because the thing that you had that was real estate, that was your business, you now have just sold. You know, it was never for me.
Yeah.
I would buy a house, fix it up, rent it out, and just hold it forever. Yeah. But you know what? I don't like single door investments, so I wouldn't buy a house. I would buy a building and do that. And that's what I do. I buy a piece of property, I improve it, I add value to it, I rent it out, and I hold it forever. I'm not a seller of that stuff. It's impossible to find those opportunities, and when you do, you work so hard to add all of the value, to put on the new roof, to renovate all of the apartments, to do all of the interiors over, to landscape, to put in the new windows, et cetera, that at the end of all of that, you're just going to sell it. It's impossible to find. It's really hard to find yielding investments out there. Yield is elusive. A lot of money is chasing very few opportunities right now. Yield is very hard to find. Why sell? To me, doesn't make any sense, and it's not right for me. But hey, if you want to buy something and then sell it and realize a gain, then that's cool. Just realize you're going to pay taxes too.
I wasn't going to go in this direction, and maybe we'll leave this out if it doesn't go anywhere. But you mentioned fixing up throughout that and rehabbing and all that kind of stuff, which involves close relationship with contractors and developers. When you were starting out, how do you build those relationships? And like, did you find those through other real estate people
with contractors?
Yeah, and like, how did you find the right ones? What was that process like for you?
Look, finding a great contractor is not unlike finding a great partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse, or whatever, right? You probably have to do it a few times before you get the sense of what makes a good partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse. Similarly, with a contractor, you have to go through it a few times. You have to see who's not only good at communicating with you, who's got great documents to memorialize the relationship with you, who's got a great track record, who's got great skill sets and great relationships with subs, who can look at your job and price it right? Because all of that has to be present in a contractor that you choose. But then you actually have to hire them, put them on the job. You got to hope that they show up 5-6 days a week and don't leave your job and disappear for 2 or 3 weeks and then come back 2 or 3 weeks later and say, oh yeah, here I am again. And Meanwhile, you've been paying taxes and utilities and insurance while they're out doing whatever, probably working on another job. Those are elements that are present in this industry and in that business. It's a very low barrier to entry business. A lot of people can say, yeah, I'm a contractor, hire me. Well, if you hire them and they don't have the experience and they don't have the communication skills, they don't have the bidding skills, they don't have the trade skills, they don't have the finished product skills and the final deliverable skills to hand over your property back to you in the time frame that you agree to and in the quality that you agree to, you're just going to get hosed. And you have to go through that a few times. So how do I do it? How have I done it? I got hosed a few times when I was younger, but I quickly learned what to look for, what to screen for, and what to require and demand from my contractor and sub relationships. And, you know, George, now after this much time in the business, the people that I had the opportunity to work with, I've been working with for many years. And I know what I get from them. They know what they get from me. It's a great two-way street, and I value that. It's more certain to me than hiring someone new and going with someone new, which occasionally you have to do. But you know that I value certainty, so I'm way more likely to go back to my usual Rolodex of subs and of GCs to do projects with than to try somebody new out of the blue. You know, unless they come highly recommended from a very trusted source and unless a few other things exist, I'm probably just going to keep using the same guys that I have because I've tripped over my own feet long enough to know what happens when I don't.
Forgive my ignorance. I know this is a basic term.
I've been calling you ignorant for over a year now, and nothing's changed. So forgiving your ignorance is something I'm not going to do. Can you please do something?
It's just a way of life. IRR, internal rate of return.
Internal rate of return. Yeah. Why are you asking me that? Didn't you ask me about IRR recently?
I think I brought up just terms in general, a bunch of different acronyms, but that was one that I don't know. What does that mean, and what should we know about it to succeed?
So internal rate of return is a way to measure the profitability of investments, and it's sort of universally accepted that this is the best way. So you can look at several investments in a similar space, industry, or asset class and generate an IRR number, an internal rate of return number, and simply grade the various investment options based on the IRR. The IRR is simply the discount rate that makes the net present value of all of the cash flows zero in a discounted cash flow analysis. You can go out and Google how to calculate IRR. You can do it in Excel. You can do it in a lot of calculators and on your iPhone probably. So I'm not going to get into teaching you how to calculate IRR, but once you calculate your IRR, you can then look at the IRR of your target investment against the backdrop of other competing investment alternatives. You always have to look at your investment alternatives. IRR gives you a measurement and a value in which to compare apples to apples. For the entrepreneur, IRR is probably not as valued as it is for the professional investment manager or investment banker or asset manager. The professional investor class is way more concerned with IRR because they're typically being held to an IRR standard. As an entrepreneur myself, I was never really IRR heavy in my investment criteria. I was looking for cash flow. I was looking for delta between in-place income and as renovated income. I was looking for future potential upside. I'm looking for locational characteristics, municipal characteristics, other risk factors. You need to have a start and an end to the investment horizon in order for an IRR calculation to generate. Well, since I'm not a seller, I was never really able to get great IRR calculations because I always want to refinance out and then redeploy that money, the proceeds I get from the refinancing, into other investments and just keep going, which is what I've done. And so therefore, I didn't really have a terminal event that could yield me an IRR calculation that was worth my time in analyzing. But that's me as an entrepreneur. The professional investment managers don't have a lifetime or two or three to hold assets like I'm planning on doing. Me as an entrepreneur, I have the freedom to do what I want and hold forever, which is what I want to do. I don't want to sell because I'm out of business. Please don't put me out of business. So I'm going to hold my assets forever and keep growing and growing and growing. Maybe slowly, maybe quickly. Whatever my pipeline is that I can generate, I'm going to grow into it, but I'm not going to be out of business and I'm not going to pay all those taxes from selling at a capital gain.
Before you got into real estate, what kind of jobs did you have? And
before I got into, you mean as a kid or as an adult before I got into real estate?
As a kid, although, I mean, I actually don't know if you had jobs even before real estate as an adult. Could you talk a little bit about what you did before then and how that prepared you for what you do now?
I love talking about that. My earliest jobs were working at my dad's store. And I would work every school break opportunity that I could. I worked in the summer sometimes.
And he was a jeweler?
My dad had a retail jewelry store. My older brother now still carries on the tradition, and his son does, and it's now fourth generation business in the state of New Jersey. There's not many.
Yeah.
So it's a really cool thing. But my brothers and I all grew up the son of a retailer and the grandson of a retailer. My dad and my grandfather were both retail jewelers. So as a kid, I always worked in my dad's jewelry store. I made boxes during the holiday time for them to put items in and then gift wrap the boxes. I did the gift wrapping. I graduated to the service desk. I graduated to the sales floor. So I learned a lot of things doing those jobs, and it was great. I loved being around my family. I loved being in the store. I loved being around people. I learned all my communication skills and people skills by being on a retail floor. I mean, it teaches you very quickly a whole lot of things when you're on a retail floor. So I had those jobs. I had summer jobs. I shoveled shit. I was a lifeguard. I cleaned boats. I washed cars.
When you say shoveled shit, I know you went to the Dude Ranch at one point. Was there another job where you also shoveled shit?
How many jobs of shoveling shit do I have to have in order to be a credible shit shoveler?
Well, I think that's what I wanted to make sure of. I wanted to see if this was a trend in your career.
Not a trend.
Okay.
Not
so
a trend.
The Dude Ranch. Okay.
I think the Dude Ranch was the primary shit shoveling.
Cool. All right, so you can continue. Sorry.
I worked jobs in restaurants. I was a busboy. I got sexually harassed by a female chef at this restaurant that I was working at. She accosted me inside of a walk-in fridge, and she was like, "Let's go." And I'm inside the fridge. I'm fucking freezing in there. She's like, "Blowjob right now. Let's go." And I'm like, I'm like 16 or 15 or something, and I was terrified. She was like more than twice my age, covered in tattoos. This is a long time ago, and I'm a kid, right? So like the sight of like this mature grown woman covered in tattoos, for me, it was not something that I'd really seen before, let alone where she was threatening me with oral sex. I worked carpentry. I worked house painting. I worked at my schools doing jobs on campus and for the school, which wasn't part of detention, because I did the detention detail as well, where you have to do that.
This is a lot.
Yeah, well, I liked working. I wanted to work. Back then it was $5, $6, $7 an hour or whatever the prevailing wage was at the time when I was a kid. But I loved working. I didn't often choose to do other things. I liked playing sports and doing kid stuff, and I had brothers that I wanted to tag along with, and I was learning how to play guitar, and I was spending a lot of time learning the instrument and doing that kind of stuff. But I really loved working. Yeah. And I thought it was fun. I learned a lot from all those different jobs, and I would still do them all today. I still do variations of all of that stuff today myself, because as an entrepreneur, that's really what part of being an entrepreneur is. You have to roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty, no matter what it takes, no matter what's required, no matter what the job is. Sure, I'm really good at hiring people to support me, hiring very smart people to help me grow my business. I'm good at that, and I do that. But I'm talking about like an emergency leak somewhere, and we call a plumber, and the plumber's a half hour out. I'm rolling up my sleeves. I'm going to patch that leak until he gets here.
Is that part of what attracted you to real estate, is that it kind of coalesced the abilities that you kind of compiled over the years?
I got attracted to real estate because it's one of the first businesses that I learned, because I had to take care of a piece of crap building in Trenton, New Jersey. I had to ride my bike there when I was 12 or 13 or 14 years old and meet locksmiths and roofers and electricians and fix stuff and whatever, when my brothers were all out doing their own thing in college and they weren't home or able to do it. And so I had to go do it. So when it came time for me to pick a job to do in life, that was a logical decision for me, because it was just something that I had experience already having done. I would have been a self-starter and entrepreneurial no matter what business or industry I went into. You got to be able to pull the trigger and execute, all that stuff. So I'm never one to sit around and wait for someone else to give me a result. If I can do it better, faster, quicker, cheaper, whatever, I'm going to do it myself.
Yeah. Any of those stick out to you as true, like particularly fond memories? I feel like the retail, your dad's store seems to be a very prominent.
That was great. It was special because it was my family. It was my dad's store. Working as a lifeguard for 7 or 8 years as a kid.
I come from a family of lifeguards. That's a good job.
That was a great one. Not much better than that. That was one of the defining jobs of my life. So when you ask me for jobs that stuck out, I would say that one stuck out.
It's funny how, you have those jobs early on that you feel like craft your personality and kind of follow.
That was one of them for me.
Yeah, no, totally.
Sure.
I feel that way about the restaurant industry. That, like no matter what I'm doing, I always feel connected to that world a bit.
I had a lot of restaurant jobs. They all were not great for me. Never worked out. I was also a waiter down at a seafood restaurant in Washington, D.C. Famous politician came in, sits down, and I spill soup all over him.
Gosh.
I mean, hot, steaming, multicolored, staining soup. Went all over his everything, suit, tie, shirt, pants. It wasn't great. I didn't last long after that moment. And
yeah, that gives me anxiety just thinking about it. Yeah.
So I have a bunch of restaurant industry stories like that. I was just horrible at them.
Yeah. I was also just dreadful, like really, really awful at that job when I started. Part of why it's so close to my heart is because I got better. And it was one of the first jobs that I actually realized you could get better at things if you just
Isn't that
continue.
a great feeling?
Yeah.
Progress, success, and achievement. Doesn't matter what it's in.
Yeah. I think that really kind of turned a lot of my life around in a strange way. Yeah. So,
I understand that.
Yeah. You mentioned some of the new investments that you've kind of ventured into, but you've said before how with real estate, a big reason why you've always stuck with real estate is its lack of volatility. Now, with stocks or some of these other things that you've looked at as far as crypto and genomics and all that kind of stuff, do you have a way to prevent buying or selling on an emotional level? Like, do you have kind of systems in place that prevent you from...
I never do anything emotionally.
Yeah.
You have to have the stomach of an investor. That means for me, you have to be in it for the long term. You have to be making your investment decisions based on measurable metrics that you believe in. If you believe the tide is shifting in a certain direction, generally, you can place a long-term bet and you'll be okay because the tide, if it shifts and you ride that shift, you'll be okay. You don't have to time it. If you don't have the long-term investment horizon, then you're trying to time the trade. And as we've talked about, I can't do it. I'm no good at it. It's really a matter of luck. I don't want to rely on the success of my investment to be contingent upon me timing the trade correctly. I want to pick and choose sectors, industries, businesses, leaders, and the right macroeconomic conditions and environment, place a couple of bets, and then wait it out for the long term. Now, over the investment horizon, it's going to shift. You're going to see the investment value rise and fall based on all sorts of factors, some internal, some external, some media news and propaganda driven, some weather related, right? I mean, it's all different depending on the investment you're making. But if you look at the chart of a stock or of a particular cryptocurrency, you'll see it go like this.
Yeah.
Well, I believe that crypto as an industry, as a technology, is really here to stay for the long term. So I understand and expect that it's going to go like this for the long term, but that as long as it keeps rising and rising and rising over the long term, as long as I end up here when I started down here, what happens in the middle, I can ride it out because I'm a long-term investor. I'm not looking to time a trade.
Is that something that has come with age in seeing the trends of the market, or?
Look, I think getting good at anything happens over a long time with maturity, with seasoning, with age. So perhaps I think so, yeah. The ability to do that maybe comes with age. So if I can tell younger investors out there, try and force yourself to have a longer horizon. Take a little bit of money. If you want to trade and time trades, take a little bit of your money and do that. But I urge you to take the bulk of your money, your investable capabilities, and make long-term bets and stick with them. If you're right, you're going to work out. If it's right, the investment's going to work out. If you're trying to time a trade, you just never know where you're going to end up. You could set your stop loss limits, you could set your buy orders, but then you have to execute. I mean, if you were in that Robinhood GameStop deal, you had your your order's set, but they never got executed because they shut the faucets off. So there's all sorts of external factors. But if you stick with something over the long term, and if you believe that the world is moving in the direction of the investment that you made, you'll have your day, one day.
Totally. And of course, this is not professional financial advice. We're just talking about, what you would do. And
it's not only is it not professional financial advice, George, but that shirt you're wearing completely eliminates any credibility. When can we have the camera back here over my shoulder looking at you?
We'll do that soon. Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. So we got 2 Zest Quests for you today, Peter.
Please make them not suck, because the last couple of weeks were weak.
No problem. I'll do my best. What's a word or phrase that has lost meaning for you or isn't useful to you?
Well, the ones that have lost meaning for me and that aren't useful to me are the ones that are overused by everybody else. So I would say, in our world today, I'm going to test you.
Yeah.
What's the one word culturally in pop culture today that everyone's saying now?
Whatever.
Whatever's one. That's a great example. Literally.
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 Yeah. When they don't mean literally.
Yeah. I literally want to kick someone in the teeth when they repeat that word 7 times in 1 or 2 sentences.
All right. And the last question. Have you changed someone's mind during an argument or disagreement? And if so, how did you do it?
Recently as yesterday, and several times. How did I do it? Great icon. Well, look, I learned how to sell when I was very young. You've heard me talk about you can't do anything unless you know how to sell. I know how to sell pretty well. So recently, yesterday, I was involved in a local election that we were having around here in our town. And I was out at one of the polling places meeting and greeting voters and talking to them and persuade them to vote differently if they weren't going to vote my way. And I did that multiple times yesterday. I was very pleased with myself that I did that. And I remember all of the there was maybe 7 or 8 circumstances where that happened throughout the course of the day. It was a long day. It was a 12, 14-hour day. And I was out there with my opponents also marketing to the subject matter at the same time. So it was a bit of a real live one-on-one debate with a one-person audience. And the goal and objective was to convert that one-person audience to vote my way. And I did it a half dozen, if not more times yesterday. And I was able to do it with a combination of passion, eye contact, tone of voice, marketability, saleability, knowledge about my subject matter and topic. I mean, it was undeniable in all of those different categories. And so ultimately, I was able to convince these voters to change their mind and vote with me multiple times. They said, hey, thanks for talking with me and engaging with me. I was going to vote differently, but now I'm going to vote this way because of my conversation with you. It's a great feeling. It reinforces the chops that I have, and I'm pretty good at selling, and I was able to deploy those chops yesterday.
Are there any common mistakes that you see people make that you try and avoid when you're having those kinds of interactions?
Well, you got to know your shit. If you're going to get into a debate with me, or if you're going to try to not get sold by me, or if we're going to engage and have a real conversation with the ultimate conclusion being a decision being made one way or the other, you better know your shit, because I know my shit. I think you have to know your facts and your shit no matter what you're doing, especially in sales. You got to know your product. You got to know the technical aspects, the customer experience aspects, the pricing aspects, the marketplace of competitive options. You need to know all that stuff. I know all that stuff. When I engage with someone, believe me, I know all that stuff inside and out. And what I see people not doing is not knowing all their stuff. You're just going to lose. You got to be an expert. You got to know. Yeah, you have to have the eye contact. You have to have the body language. You have to have the verbiage and the ability to speak clearly and to influence people and to have a conversation that's meaningful with people, because you got to keep them engaged, but you got to know your shit. If you don't know your shit, it's done, man. The other side will sniff it out in 10 seconds and they're done. They're walking away. It's a hard no, whatever. They're at the door. So you got to know your shit.
I think it's what we'll call this episode. Know
your
your
shit.
Love it. All right. Thanks, Peter. I'll see you next week.
George, what color shirt you're going to wear next week?
I'll try and find a purple one. I think that's what I'll do.
You have one. I've seen it. And you know what else I want to do next week? Can we do field notes next week?
Yeah,
I have
absolutely.
a few value-add construction projects that are going on right now. I'd like to bring you and the camera in and show people around what we're doing. We've got some really good progress that we're making in these buildings. I think people want to see the work that's going on and the development of the building.
Yeah, that sounds great. We posted our first one of those today, and we already got some great feedback from it. So cool.
Thanks.
Right. See you then.
If you like what you just heard,
You can subscribe to the Daily Cash Flow on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts, and we'd love it if you left us a review. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook at SiegelCap and on Instagram at Siegel.cap. As always, if you're an accredited investor, go to SiegelCapital.com and take our survey to see if you qualify to take part in one of our apartment building deals. That's SIEGEL Capital.com.